everybody, to our webinar today, Breaking Barriers, how open Xactimate line items will improve workflows. Why are we doing this? Where do we come from? We had a conference in Orlando in December where we said, okay, we need to talk about kind of how we can bring all the stakeholders of the restoration ecosystem together. And that is one of the continuations of that session. And we concluded our conference in Orlando with Michelle from CNR Magazine, kind of pulling all together all the different angles. And that's where we want to basically start off again today. Where are we? What are the current industry impressions? And how can we tie that together into a more closely knit ecosystem around Xactimate. So welcome, and over to you, Michelle.
Beautiful. Thank you, Andreas. Okay, so I know it takes a few minutes for people to kind of roll in. So a little bit of housekeeping. This is going to be recorded. So if there are things that are said and you want to kind of watch this later or share with your team or whatever, the Magic Plan team will have this. And I'm guessing we'll send out an email afterward with the recorded links so you guys can watch it later. Kudos to Magic Plan for continuing to bring these conversations to the table. I know that integrations, open ecosystem, all of software, all of it is a huge conversation right now and something that restorers and contractors and, well, the entire ecosystem, carriers, everybody is wading through to try to better the processes that we have when it comes to serving the end customer. So as people are still kind of trickling in, I'm going to let the two panelists introduce themselves. So Jason, maybe I'll toss it over to you first to kind of introduce yourself, and then Tony, you can be next, and then we'll kind of dive into the conversation a little bit.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are really excited to have you here to talk a little bit about the integration that we've had with Magic Plan for a little while now for Sketch, but also about the new line item capability. My role, I'm the Vice President of Product for Property Estimating Ecosystem. So my team works to drive the roadmap items forward through our development team. And then we also implement and support new ecosystem partners, new integrations like Magic Plan. And our core objective is to really help our partners be successful. I've been with Verisk for 19 years, and I've got an education in both business and software development. And many years back, I was a framer. I built commercial buildings and homes. So I really have loved this industry over the last 19 years. So great to be here. Thank you, Michelle.
Yes. All right, Tony, take it away.
Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Tony Triola, and I'm the head of our Ecosystems and Partnerships organization at Verisk Property Estimating Solutions. I come from the industry. It feels like I've been doing this forever. 1997, I was hired as a property adjuster at Farmers Insurance. Spent my first 15 years there. In 2009, I began a strategy role helping to lead claim strategy at Farmers before joining Liberty Mutual, spending about 8 years there. I've been at Verisk now about a little over 4 years. This ecosystem journey has been near and dear to my heart and a labor of love. So I'm happy to share a little bit about what we've done over the past year and a half or so, what Jason and I have been able to do with opening the ecosystem, and hopefully give you some ideas to innovate for the future and be successful. So thanks for having me. I'm honored.
Awesome. Okay, so to everybody who has come in from the waiting room, as we keep the conversation going, please feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A box. We want to make this as open of a dialogue as possible and try to get to your questions and really have it be a conversation between all of us and not just the few of us that are on camera. So let's kind of lay the groundwork here. So Tony, can you start by laying the groundwork of why an open ecosystem is so important for the claims environment?
Sure, I'm happy to. Thanks, Michelle. So, look, I'm going to put my claims executive hat back on for a second and tell this story, right? So, if I'm a claims executive, it is my job to ensure that my claims process, is the best and most efficient for my organization. So, how do I do that? I lay out the process, I organize each step, right, and then I find gaps in the process where we can find efficiency. Then I have to fill those gaps with solutions. How do I solve this problem? And more than likely, it has to do with a third-party vendor ecosystem solution. So I look out in the marketplace of all the solutions that exist, and I quickly say to myself as a claims executive, there are a lot of solutions out there. And it turns out I'm probably already using the best solution that there is for me. And even if I'm not, finding a new solution and ingesting that in a way where I can test it and validate that it's a better solution than what I'm using is really hard if that sits outside my process, right? Verisk apps, like everyone else in the industry, exist in the ecosystem of minimally and disparately connected solutions for the insurance carrier customer and the contractor customer. These are point solutions, and by their very nature, these point solutions were designed to solve a single problem, a point problem. They were never designed. If you have an idea for a product, you usually don't think about how this point solution fits into the current ecosystem or how this might fit in to a carrier's process. You just know that there's a problem out there that you can solve better than anyone, and you develop a solution for that. So as a claims executive, I look at these solutions and say, how am I going to do this? And it's really, really hard if it sits outside of my process. So enter the idea of the Verisk ecosystem, right? How do we connect all these solutions together in a way that enables a carrier to create a custom workflow that's designed just for them, not just a bunch of hodgepodge put together solutions, point solutions in the industry, but how do I really get all these solutions to work together? And when I started at Verisk, I was the head of our automation team, and we looked for call it claims management systems to sort of do business with, to try and automate this process and make the claims process more efficient for the carriers. But it turns out that because that market is so fragmented, that it's not realistic to do so. It takes someone like Verisk. A project like this, something so big like this, needs a Verisk involved because 8 or 9 estimates out there when a carrier needs a value for a claim, and that's ultimately what the carrier needs to settle a claim, and that's what they're looking to do. 8 or 9 times out of 10, that valuation comes from us. So I take our duty to work with the ecosystem solution providers out there very seriously, and our duty to our customers to help them design a process that's the most efficient for them, which saves money, which trickles down to the customer. That we develop this ecosystem in a way that opens it up so that anyone and everyone can join the ecosystem. I'll tell you what, I've been in this industry for 28 years, and I've done a lot, I believe, and been part of the leading edge of change for 15 or 16 years now. I've never been more proud of what I accomplished with Jason Love and the Verisk team than I am of 2024 and starting to open this ecosystem. And I'll say this, the majority of our integrations today come from startups, and that just wasn't possible a year and a half ago. And I believe that's something we can all be very proud of, and it creates opportunity for everyone in the insurance ecosystem.
One quick follow-up, Tony. Sorry, Jason, really quick. One quick follow-up I was thinking about through that conversation, which really any of you could answer. How new is this concept of an ecosystem, opening it up? I think, Tony, you mentioned like startups are easier to integrate with, but the number of solutions that are out there now is completely different than the number of solutions that were out there 5-10 years ago. So do you feel like this ecosystem term is a newer concept, or it just kind of has grown?
Yeah, and that's where I was going to
Okay.
kind of my comment, Michelle. I think complementing what Tony's talking about, like what Tony's talking about has really been a significant strategy shift for Verisk and also the Xactware suite of products, property estimating solutions. If we go back, say 5 years, 10 years, our integration strategy was to integrate with customer solutions, but then be very narrow in our selection of who we integrated with from a third-party integrator standpoint. We didn't even use the term ecosystem partner. We used third-party integrators, and we would typically focus on, in a given vertical, let's choose 1 or 2 that have a strong position in the market and integrate with them. A few years back, Aaron Brunko came to me, and I know he's had subsequent discussions with Tony, that we're going to have an open ecosystem, and we're shifting our strategy to where we really want to create value for our mutual customers. We want to create value for our ecosystem partners and create value for Verisk. And so it's really about value creation and allowing anyone to connect to the ecosystem that brings value to the ecosystem. Tony, you were going to add to that. I jumped in there early. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. I believe everything you said was on point and tracks with everything they've done. I started this journey with Verisk last February after a conversation with Aaron Brunko, who, by the way, has been extremely supportive of the strategy. And it's been very successful at Verisk, right? People have been trying to connect into our platform for a long, long time. And if you think back, prior to February of last year, How you got connected with Verisk was typically because you were already a large player in the industry, right? Customers started saying, it would just be a lot easier, Verisk, if you would work with this company. Can you please work with this company? And so we had, knowing now what I didn't know then, I would have characterized the ecosystem as closed before February, but knowing now, I'd say that we were never closed. It was never a closed ecosystem. We just didn't know how to prioritize being an open ecosystem. But what you have today as a result of that conversation with Jason and Aaron and myself and Aaron is an ecosystem where everyone plays fairly. The terms are the same for everyone that wants to enter. You no longer have to be a large player in the industry to integrate with us. Anybody with the will and the resources to perfect an integration with us can do so. And so this is all, there's obviously a financial component to this. We are a public for-profit company, and so we have a fiduciary and financial responsibility to our investors and our shareholders to create value. That value creates profits. But we believe in a win-win-win solution for the customers, carriers, and our integrators. Lost my train of thought, but we believe in this open ecosystem for a win-win-win for all the parties involved. At the end of the day, there is an altruistic component to this that goes back to my very beginning in the insurance industry with struggling to find solutions for my carrier that I worked for, right? And it turns out when looking at the process that way, it wasn't that we had a solutions problem, we just had a connectivity problem. And so what we're trying to do is solve that connectivity problem.
And I mean, may I double down on that, because we from magicplan, we've been part of that conversation, and I can really test to that change. So we've been around for some time, and where did we start? We started exactly what Tony said. There was a problem, and we built a solution for this. I mean, my personal journey was I was a project manager in reconstruction work, and I wanted to have a solution that helped me map out the place and then kind of derive an estimate from it, right? So that's 10 years back, and we've seen the change with Verisk and Xactimate, and that is accelerating hugely over the last couple of months, actually, and that really, is what's giving me hope that we can find a process connection and those integrations that helps for our end. It's the contractor customers, right? We are more towards that end. And I believe it's so true what Tony has said. You have solutions out there. You just need to make sure that you can pass on from one to another. And that can really alleviate the participation and kind of reduce the pain a little bit that was felt prior, which just benefits overall everybody.
Andreas, one of the things that you said stood out to me was just even in the last couple of months, right? Like you've seen things changing in the last couple of months. So this open ecosystem initiative has been in place for a few years now. You've heard our claims president, Maroon Murad, speak about it in public. You've heard Aaron Brunko speak about it at Elevate. But there are kind of 6 key components that Tony and I really focus on every day in our roles. One, as Tony mentioned, an open ecosystem, right? That's a key component of our strategy. Really, anyone should be allowed that meets certain data security criteria and maturity criteria and brings value to the ecosystem. 2, easy legal terms. Anybody that's integrated with us knows that sometimes the contracts can be more work than the technical integration, but we've really been working to streamline that. Compliments to Tony working with our legal team. Straightforward pricing. We are a for-profit company, and as we try to bring partners forward that create value when they connect to the ecosystem, there's value they're able to capture, value produced for our customers, and we like to have a little bit of that value go back to Verisk just for longevity and alignment and economic incentives. And then reporting and analytics is kind of the fourth component, right? We've been working on those, and those things are coming to maturity. 5th, modern data connections. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the modern data connections and the line items today. So we have a team within my product group, and they're continually working to enhance how we can integrate with customers and partners. And then kind of the 6th tenet in our strategy is configuration tools that are available to partners and to customers. Now, right now, many of our integrations, if not most of the integrations, they require somebody from our support team or from our customer success team to enable those integrations. We have capabilities that are in beta right now and are on our roadmap to try and bring that ability to enable and choose integrations and create custom workflows. We're working to bring that to fruition and making some good progress. So Andreas, as you've seen things change in the recent months, that's because we're working on these key components of our strategy, and line items is specifically one of those areas.
So what specifically about line items drove Verisk to be like, all right, this is an area that we're going to open. We're going to allow specific line item integration. So explain maybe what the line item integration means specifically from that integration standpoint, and then how it impacts the contractor. I'm not sure who wants to take that one, but.
Tony, I'll just take a minute or two on that, and then you can jump in and fill in remaining details. But so we've had a fairly robust integration framework in place for decades, but we've used that to predominantly connect with customer solutions, not with ecosystem partners. And we have standard data elements that can transact via API, things like assignment details when an assignment comes from Xactanalysis, sketch and spatial data, documents that are attached to the assignment like a bid or a report, statuses as the claim progresses and the homeowner is contacted, then notes and estimate data. So these are kind of standard data elements that we've been able to transact for quite a while, and line items are a key component of this. Now, years ago, I ran our training department, and if anyone's ever trained on software, it's fun. It's probably been one of the most engaging jobs and enjoyable jobs I've had here with Verisk, training on Xactimate, Xactanalysis. And we would train adjusters, we'd train estimators. And one of the things that, we teach them how to write an estimate, but we'd always say it's your responsibility to get the measurements and the dimensions of the property. It's your responsibility to determine the scope of repair and identify what line items need to go into the estimate. So we've always kind of outsourced that to the adjuster and the estimator. And as there's this need in the industry to really streamline and automate those processes, more of our partners are bringing solutions where they're creating simplified flows for adjusters and estimators to determine the scope of repair and to get the measurements, like your floor plan solution and your estimating solution, and bring that data right into Xactimate so it can be produced in an estimate using our industry data. So, Tony?
Yeah, no, I'd add to that and say, look, I believe something magical is starting to happen in the ecosystem right now, right? And look, the Apple ecosystem is something I've overused as an example, perhaps, but it's probably the one that people are most familiar with still. So look, in 2007, when Apple drops the iPhone, it's a great tool, right? But every geek with enough money in their pocket goes out and gets one because it's revolutionary and the first of its kind. But for everyone else, for my grandparents, it's still just a phone, and a really expensive one, right? But Apple had this bigger vision, this larger vision. So they create this app store a few months later around the iPhone. And sure, they put a few apps in there they think people are going to want, something to get their feet wet, something to play around with. There's the beer drinking app, right, where the beer with a gyroscope goes down. And then there's the shake the thing, and it gives you a restaurant recommendation. But, I've been using this lately, right? The last time I got an iPhone, I didn't pay for it. Like, there's so much value created in the ecosystem that somebody decided they wanted to pay for this thing for me, just to be able to get to my dollars, right? With the applications and the rest of the ecosystem that supports the phone. I think, and Apple doesn't direct the kind of apps. They have standards and guidelines with what can be in their ecosystem, but they don't direct what kind of apps are being created. I would say that this line item creation and export process that we're moving towards has been 100% driven by customers, right? This has been an evolution. We didn't start off with this. We started off with a simple data integration with data fields that were defined, and these are the couple of things you can do to integrate with us. And over the past 14, 15, or 16 months, we have seen an uptick in demand for this functionality. And that's clearly because customers are asking for it as we drive towards that process and insurance claims, that automates estimate creation. I don't think anyone's ready to take their hands off the wheel yet, but baby steps, right? So we can identify some damage, we can identify some material, we can create some line items, and we shift from an authoring stage for that adjuster to an editing stage for that adjuster. And even though we're not completely hands off yet in automating the process, if I can get data to a desk adjuster when they first receive the claim, and I turn a 90-minute phone call to scope that loss into a 30-minute phone call, that is a huge deal for an insurance carrier. But going back to the original question, I would say that this move towards line item creation, a lot of people are asking for it, is clearly driven by the market and driven by the customer, which is exactly where all this functionality should start coming from.
And I mean, if I can again complete the round, Jason, what you said, the measurements and the scoping, right, that has to happen on site. That's what you told your people, you need to do that. And that's where we come in, what I've been doing. I mean, I was there as a project manager, doing my measurements, trying to determine the scope. And then it doesn't end there, but you need to pass that on, right? It doesn't help. We've built a great solution to do that on site. We have a good sketching and measuring solution. We are kind of progressing fast on our own kind of scope AI solution, which I think is bridging the gap to what Tony just said. But eventually it needs to leave the site, right? We enable the person on site doing it, but it needs to leave the site and be passed on. And that's where the line items come in, right? It gets translated into the line items and then it gets passed on to the carrier, to the adjuster, to whomever needs to look at this next. And I think that is what makes that opening up of the line items so important. And from my perspective has really been quite personally for my process setup, right? The one element that will improve workflows the most from my perspective.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jason.
Andrea, if I can just, add a little bit more to kind of the how and kind of as we transition into questions about the impact. So Andres, kind of as we've started our ecosystem partnership relationship with magicplan, phase one was to bring your floor plan in as a sketch into Xactimate, just expediting that transfer of measurements that are captured in magicplan so that the adjuster or estimator can just accelerate the creation of the estimate. Now, during that time, we were enhancing our API so that we could start to receive line items. And there were a couple of different workflows that we've implemented with your team. One workflow allows a magicplan to be able to be requested from Xactimate or XactAnalysis. Another workflow allows a project to start in magicplan and have an Xactimate estimate produced and returned through the magicplan workflow. And so as we've kind of started down that path, we've made additional API capabilities available to our partners. And you now have the ability to send the line items in when you're sending the sketch. Can you talk to kind of at high level what that looks like from a contractor's experience, but can you maybe go into a little bit more of the experience of, what a contractor does with the application and how they capture the floor plan and then the line items, what that experience looks like to get that into Xactimate?
Yeah, so I mean, what we are about is enhancing the people in the field, and we use the mobile phone, mostly Apple devices, to leverage kind of the AR capabilities and really measure out and sketch out the place. You can connect laser with our precision link interface for accuracy, and then that's kind of your input for your scoping that you pass on, because kind of once you've mapped out the full sketch and floor plan, kind of inherently it has that takeoff, right? And the takeoff, once you define what areas are affected, that's directly translating, okay, what's the scope of the project, what needs to be done, and what are the quantities behind that. And you can do that again on site with a rather simple interface. We want to enhance that by voice. That's our scope AI capabilities. And once you have that, that can really translate into line items. And then you package both elements together. Eventually, if you pass it on to Xactimate, the ESX, and including the line items, and you have that populate in Xactimate.
Perfect.
Great.
Beautiful. Jason, anything else you wanted to add to that one?
No,
Maybe.
that's great. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So hopefully that answered, we had some questions come into the Q&A about how, so hopefully that answered the how question. If you have more, keep throwing those questions in the Q&A and we'll try to keep going back to those, but I think those are pretty good explanations. So let's talk a little bit about the impact that an open ecosystem and integrations like this will have. How will this change collaboration and scoping in the field? You've talked about it a little bit and how it'll go back and forth, but Tony, you want to start with this one on how you think that it's going to change scoping and work in the field?
Yeah, sure. Look, one of my favorite expressions: "A rising tide lifts all ships." Right. So, only by working together as an industry can we truly affect change that's meaningful for the industry. Right. If we work in a fragmented way, we will continue to build fragmented solutions. And look, Verisk strives to not be a barrier to innovation, but to be a facilitator for innovation. So I believe more than anything else, this open ecosystem allows people to challenge themselves, to think, if I can come up with a new way of doing this old thing, I now have a path to enter a market, right, in property claims by integrating with Verisk, who sits at the center of the valuation platform. And so I have easier access to the carrier. I have easier access to sell my. I've eased access to sell my product through to the carrier, and the carrier has an increased efficiency by which they can test and weed out the solutions they don't want and keep the ones they want. So think of it as like a bunch of baby bird nests that we're building, right? And a lot of these birds are going to try to fly and jump out of the nest, and we'll never see them again. But there are going to be some birds that fly and soar, right? And customers, I'm sorry, and companies have been doing this despite not having an open ecosystem to do this within, right? And we're trying to make that easier and facilitate innovation and the claims experience for the customer.
Beautiful. All right, Jason or Andres, anything you want to add on the impact?
I have several things to add, Andreas, if I can jump in there. I think, Tony, you hit innovation. So the impact of this accelerates innovation, right? We, at Verisk, we innovate, we create value. We're striving to create value for our customers, but we know that we can't be all things to everyone in our industry, and we have priorities that we're working to progress. We have roadmaps, and when we make data APIs available to our partners, we help accelerate innovation within our industry. There are times that partners can move faster than we're able to because other items on our roadmap. So I think, on that point around innovation, Tony, just accelerating innovation, right? The open ecosystem accelerates innovation. And then, we're all striving to make it easier for new entrants in these industries as employees, new employees, whether it's on the contractor side or the service provider side and carrier side, as new employees come out of college or come into the field, like Tony, when you were a new adjuster, your first day on the job, we're trying to put tools in the hands of professionals that make it so that the learning curve is shorter, right? They can go in with the magicplan capture solution and they can start capturing measurements and the scope of repair quickly, right? So accelerate that onboarding and that new entrant learning curve. And then just creating more cohesive workflow for companies and for our customers, right? When we've got disparate point solutions that Tony talked about initially, you got to go to this system and do one part of the job. You've got to go to another system and do another part of a job. We want to have that cohesive connection where the data flows in an intuitive way. And I would say that we're making good progress on that. That's still a challenge. And I think there's opportunity for us to work in our design and with our partners to make those workflows even more cohesive. But when we bring those data connections together, we do create more cohesive workflows.
Yeah. And look, let's be honest, adjusting claims is really, really, really hard. I know firsthand, whether you're an adjuster trying to adjust a claim on behalf of an insurance carrier, or whether you're a contractor trying to work with an adjuster to effect a repair, it's really hard to estimate a loss and be accurate and efficient, right? And so, Jason, you hit the nail on the head. Like, integrations like the ones we have with magicplan, putting them in the hands of the adjuster allows them to be more accurate and more efficient earlier in their career than they would be otherwise.
All right. One of the questions that we had come in, and it might be a little bit of a tricky question that you might have to answer afterward, but in order to get line items of an invoice, we currently have to scan the invoice PDF. How do we integrate to get these line items programmatically?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. There are integrations that allow the data to flow back to a job management system. So we do have job management system integrations that allow the estimate data to flow back to that system. One of the things that I'll talk a little bit more about when we get to challenges is the data authorization challenge. And that's something that Tony and our organization is working to go through. So I'll add more detail to that in a little bit, but I would say that we do have job management systems that have data integration. So as a contractor creates an estimate, that estimate data flows back for job management, for invoicing, for material ordering, and things of that nature.
Yeah, it is a really good question, and perhaps I'll touch on a little bit more in a bit as well. But I'd say that that question points out one of the largest challenges we have as an industry, and that is the ready availability of data and the insurance carrier's propensity to share that data with the ecosystem. Because if you're a contractor trying to effect a repair for a job, there's typically not a direct line between you and the insurance carrier. So the insurance carrier is never going to allow Joe Contractor access to the data, at least not today. But look, I'm one of the old guys in the industry now, I guess. When I look in the mirror, I see my mentor. I don't see me anymore. It wasn't that long ago when I remember fighting this battle with cloud computing, where as an insurance carrier working at Farmers and working at Liberty, we were really hesitant to buy a solution from a company that didn't have on-prem data storage. We didn't like Amazon Web Services. We didn't like any kind of cloud storage. And we have clearly overcome that as an industry. And I think this is just a factor of time and people becoming comfortable and used to a new process. It's not hard, it's just new.
Yeah, Tony, you kind of opened up that, elaborated on that challenge. Maybe we'll just take a few more minutes to focus on that. I know we wanted to come to challenges later on, but I think that's great to go into the detail there. So we do in the open ecosystem, there are challenges around data authorization. We all know the environment that we work in where PRI, PII is protected. And the organizations that collect that data have an obligation to ensure that that's secure. And sometimes there are challenges in passing that down through the supply chain. So if there is a carrier originated assignment in exact analysis, and that goes to a TPA that sends it to the contractor, we don't have authorization to export that data, particularly the PII that's collected from the carrier, to any third-party solution that a contractor may use. And so as we have integrations with contractor-focused solutions, job management systems, field inspection solutions, a large part of the work that we do with those companies is around trying to obtain data authorization so that that data can flow freely through the full service chain. And so that's something that's a big priority for us. Our COO, Joel Dagenet, is working on that as one of his top priorities this year. And we're working to see how we can continue to allow that data flow with the appropriate authorization, both systematically and contractually, to ensure that we're able to get the data seamlessly into the tools that it's needed in.
One of the questions that came in, there are extra complexities to our industry, specifically restoration, when you bring in the carrier and data like you talked about. So the question is, would the solution work for the remodeling industry? I would think so. I would think that it would be easier to have this open ecosystem and integrate when the carrier specifically maybe isn't involved, or TPAs or whatever that may be. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's really straightforward and easy, and the open ecosystem works the same way. Today we have two different workflows: a workflow with magicplan, a workflow where the job originates with Verisk and our Xactimate exact analysis products, and then a workflow in which the job starts in magicplan. And so in that non-program work, when that data starts in magicplan, it can flow into our system and back to the various ways without additional authorization requirements.
Okay. All right. We ready to move on and talk about the future? So that kind of the next topic is what can restorers and third-party vendors do now to prepare as the ecosystem continues to open, perhaps as the data starts to maybe flow a little bit easier, as security gets amplified, those kind of things. So who wants to start with looking at the future and how probably both contractors and third parties like magicplan or others can get ready for the ecosystem continuing to open up?
So, anybody, yeah, Andreas, in there.
Oh, go ahead, Andres.
Well,
Were you gonna say something?
yeah, I was about to say something because I mean that basically comes back, but I'm coming off what you said, Tony, in the very beginning. I mean, what can you do to prepare is right. You identify the gaps that you currently have, and now aware of what's out there to fill those gaps going forward. You basically start working there. So for me, it's really okay. How can I train my staff, have my staff ready to kind of take advantage of being, in my mind, more productive in the field because I can do the sketching and the measuring. And also at the same time, what Jason said, you still need to do the scoping, right? So anything that prepares yourself for how can you get the best scoping the fastest as possible. And on this end, I mean, we invite everyone to trial out our version of it, which is the Scope AI. It's not yet publicly released, but for everyone who's listening to that call, we can release it in beta to you personally. So whomever is interested in preparing themselves today, they are invited to just join us because I think those two components, the measuring and the scoping, start at the beginning of the journey, and we want to make that as smooth as possible for the contractors in the field to improve their operations and reduce turnaround times. And that is what we can invite everyone to do right now, while collectively with Verisk, with Xactimate, we are improving kind of the flow of the line items and the accessibility of the data going forward.
Okay.
I'd also add that, and I have a bit of a trading background like Jason does, and I would say that look, there isn't anything that's going to replace becoming an expert in whatever you do. So become an expert in what you do. magicplan's suite of products will make you better, there's no doubt, but it won't solve the problem for you. You have to become an expert in your field, know what it takes to estimate a loss, understand the carrier guidelines, even understand the why. I think that's a big gap that we have today, is understanding why carriers have the kind of guidelines for estimating they have in place. And there's a real big misunderstanding and disconnect between what a contractor would put in their estimate and what an insurance carrier likes to see in an estimate. So become an expert in your field, right? And then use tools like magicplan's suite of products to make yourself better and more efficient.
Yeah. So Tony, yeah, thank you. Very good. I remember teaching a class of about 20 students in Xactimate, and by the end of the third day, their eyes are just completely glossed over. Just too much information. Their head hurts. They're tired. And the reason I bring that up is when we break old habits and learn new things, like, it is exhausting. It takes extra energy. It is uncomfortable. And, you know, as we look toward the future, what can we do to kind of prepare for the future? What can restorers do? I'd say, don't be afraid to break old habits. Know that there's going to be a little bit of discomfort and fatigue as you try to adopt a new workflow, a new solution. And changing the behaviors takes a little bit of time. But I encourage people to use the integrated workflows, like with magicplan and line items, from the spatial data, the sketch, to the estimating. It will save a tremendous amount of time. The automation of an interior sketch production saves significant time, and it can even save hours of time in a single day. You know, the automation around scope identification and sending line items into Xactimate, that's a time-saving mechanism. So if you'll break the old habits, use the integrated workflow, push through that discomfort that you experience at the beginning, you will get a lot of value out of it. And then I was going to say, you know, just give feedback to the magicplan team. My role in product management is to help improve workflows and efficiency And so we listen to our partners, and we have a roadmap of items that we continue to prioritize, and we'll move forward as quickly as we can to drive additional functionality, but give that feedback around your experience so that we can continue to incrementally improve.
Beautiful. Okay, we're going to keep the conversation going, but there is a lot of excitement in the Q&A of how do I start doing this? How do I learn more about Scope AI? How do I learn more about the integration? So both from a Verisk standpoint and from a magicplan standpoint, who's the best contact on both sides? Just shout out an email, maybe. Verisk, go ahead, Tony or Jason, shout out an email that people can connect with, and then Andreas, whoever on your team people should connect with.
Well, I would say I didn't have that one in my notes. I should have. I would say that for our integration solutions, we've got about 119 active ecosystem integrations today. And so I'm not the best person to bring all of those questions to. Our strategy, Michelle and Andreas, is that relative to the magicplan integration, to kind of start with your team to get set up to use the service. You know, as you're set up to use the service, the magicplan provisioning team has a mechanism in which our team will enable the integration for them. So I'd say that's kind of the first step, and communication will come to us to enable the integration for magicplan. If you're working with if you're an enterprise contractor that has an exact analysis data set, or large instances with multiple users, you can contact our e-service center to have that integration enabled, or your customer success manager. So those are kind of the two paths on our side: our e-service center, which is our support team, and then your customer success manager if you're an enterprise customer.
And if you're a technology or solutions provider or service provider, if you Google Verisk Partner Ecosystem, the first result on the screen will be our Verisk Partner page, which provides a list of those companies that are integrated with us currently, and a link to an application process to get started talking to Jason and I, and to see if we can perfect the right kind of integration for you.
Beautiful. Okay, Andreas, who have magicplan should they reach out to?
Cool. Yes, pretty much the same. For existing customers, I mean, reach out to your customer success representative through your established channels. Who for anyone who's interested in this and is new to magicplan, Alan is on the call. So Alan at magicplan, L. And that he will take care of any kind of new requests about either looking at the Scope AI or testing out the integration.
Perfect. Okay, so we have a little bit of time left. So let's talk a little bit about the challenges that are here. And I want to take this from kind of two levels. One, the challenge from the overall ecosystem standpoint of what challenges stand in the way for open ecosystem integrations like this. And then also the challenges that you overcame both from the magicplan side and the Verisk side as you did try to step forward in opening the line items up and those kind of things. So maybe let's start high level, maybe with Jason or Tony, whoever wants to take it on the overall industry challenge here.
Yeah, I'll start that one. What keeps me up right now is capacity. I don't think anyone imagined how popular this program would be. Well, maybe I would have imagined it, but I think it was hard to imagine how popular this program would be. And so we've grown tremendously over the past 15 months or so. Unfortunately, the resources haven't grown with that. We're working on that, right? So capacity is what keeps me up at night. And Jason and I are working on a process by which many of these ecosystem integrations can be perfected through an online self-service, much like you would be used to with Android or the Apple iOS ecosystem. We very much strive not to be the bottleneck in this process. So we're working on increasing our capacity and increasing the velocity at which we can perfect these integrations.
Perfect. Okay, Jason, anything that you want to add to that one?
Yeah, I think just the challenges. We talked a little bit about the data authorization and data workflows to make sure that we can send the data to the parties that need it and have the authorization to do so. And then just ensuring that we aren't, as we grow the ecosystem, we're not creating more headache for a contractor in their day-to-day. Working with our partners to ensure that there are those seamless integrations and seamless workflows that are intuitive instead of confusing.
Okay, Andreas.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of why we are doing what we are doing here. I think the software needs to talk to one another, and it starts best if the people developing the software talk to one another. So this is why we are here, I guess.
That's right.
And to make that talk the most effective and efficient, that's where we need the customer input, right? So that's why we opened up that session to have a Q&A. That's why we invite people to start joining even a beta version right now. And if we all talk to one another and then make the systems talk to one another, I think that's how we can break down those barriers. And then we make the most use of whatever capacity Tony is able to get, right? So
and the more these workflows are used, Andreas, the more that the integrations are used, that adds additional value for everybody, and that creates the opportunity for us to iterate, expand our capacity for service, and accelerate our roadmaps. So
yeah, 100%. So anyone who's followed our invitation that we are giving out here, get in contact, tell us what's working for you and what not. And I think that is going to really drive the ecosystem, right? That's on us. That's why we are here. That's why we are trying to be transparent about it, because we want as many people coming in as possible.
Yes. Okay, we have a few minutes left, so if anybody has any more questions, drop them in the Q&A. We're going to try to wrap it up in the next few minutes here, but what was Alan's email again? Is it Alan, ALLAN @magicplan.app?
Yeah, that's it, Michelle.
Okay, Alan and I have emailed enough that I'm glad that I know it by now. Okay, so kind of put your, take your crystal balls out, and if you kind of had a vision into maybe, I don't know, 2 to 3 years into the future, we don't have to go way into the future because technology moves so fast. What do you hope that this looks like for the ecosystem in a few years? Like, what do you see as the biggest challenges that need to be solved as the ecosystem continues to open up? We talked a little bit about preparation. I know that there's probably some security issues and those kind of things. So what does the industry need to do as a whole moving forward to make this look even better in the next few years?
Tony, you want to start with that, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take it. Add color, Mr. Love. So I'll just go back to some of the things that I've said already, right? So we need to remove the bottlenecks from our process. We need to enable a process that allows anyone and everyone that wants to integrate with us have to do so at their speeds. That begins with an online self-service process by which you don't have to talk to me. You don't have to talk to Jason Love, although we're lovely people. That's one big thing that's one big challenge the industry faces. Is
self-serve, right? Self-serve for both the user of our application and for the ecosystem partners that want to integrate, right?
Yes, and for the carrier. So we also are striving towards developing let's call it a component-based workflow orchestration tool that operates at like a microservice level. So depending on varying conditions of a claim for a carrier, they can choose where that data goes next and design that workflow in a bespoke way that works for them, all without talking to their IT department, without talking to our IT department, right? Having a tool by which someone can just create the process, test it, and put it in production, and something that's bespoke and that works for them specifically that may not work for another carrier. So that's right now we're still challenged by trying to get some of these disparately connected apps to talk to each other. And so I think that's the next evolution. After we solve the data problem, the next evolution is how do we allow the customer to go in and design a complete process using a suite of tools that we've pre-integrated with to make their process really sing and be efficient for their customers.
Hi, Jason, anything you want to add to that one?
Yeah, I think ditto to what Tony said. And I think just, additional acceleration in our ability to enhance our ecosystem integration capabilities. And that's coming with time as we have more partners like magicplan and collaborate with you and prioritize work, we're getting organizational support on that development to enhance our integration capabilities. So yeah, thank you.
Andreas, anything that you want to add from your crystal ball vision?
Well, I mean, we've seen the progress that has been made over the last couple of months, and I can only repeat, I mean, if we stay on that trajectory, I think we are getting close to a good integration really fast. And then anything that's helping in making the data even more accessible and more seamless, that's beneficial. So we try to be super open in terms of accepting, but also passing on. We want to continue on that track. To all sides, we talked today about Verisk. I mentioned kind of measuring devices. Like it is this mindset, and I think it's taken hold of all the different stakeholders. So I think we just need some more time to pass, and then we are heading in the right direction. That's really what I feel, and what makes me hopeful. I think that's what either Jason or Tony, you said at the very beginning, but we are heading in the right direction, and that is what makes me hopeful.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we had some questions about doing a demo today. We're not doing any direct product pushes. We were trying to not make this a product promo for anybody and more just talk about the issues at hand and integration. So if you are interested in demos, Alan is your man again. And so we did have another question come in about security clearances really quick. Are there any security clearances that you require before you will even take the first step with integration?
Yeah, so magicplan has gone through our security requirements. We have a third-party risk assessment process that we bring all of our partners through. We require that they have a mature security framework in place. We require that they're SOC 2 compliant. We also we've got pretty hefty cyber insurance requirements. So by the time a company like magicplan or others integrates with us, they have done the due diligence and have a mature security policy and framework to comply with the strict requirements that we have for our Verisk customers.
Perfect. All right. Any final comments before we wrap it up? Any of you? Okay. All right. Great conversation. So, gentlemen, thank you. Andreas, do you have one more thing you want to add?
Yeah, but extending what you are saying, thank you for the team from Verisk to join us here today. We are really excited about what's happening. And it's been said multiple times, but you can't say it enough. It's going to be a win-win-win for all sides. And that is awesome.
Yes, beautiful. Okay. Thank you again to everyone who's here. Again, this is being recorded, so the magicplan team will have it. Alan at magicplan.app is the best person to reach out to start with, or look for the Verisk ecosystem page where you can find out more about that. Thank you to everyone. I look forward to continuing the conversation on future webinars, future capture events, whatever that may be.